Mbogoto. Mbogoto. Eta. Eta. Good morning, everybody. How are you all doing? Great. Great? I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. So, we are all aware, our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, has announced about 2 years ago that gender-based violence has become a pandemic in South Africa. Siyakowisha, ne? Siyakowisha. But so often we talk about gender-based violence and we forget to address the element behind gender-based violence. What are the drivers? You know, what are the traumas that come with gender-based violence? And today we want to speak from a perspective of what is the cost of gender-based violence from a trauma perspective. How does it impact women? How do they show up in the marketplace? How do they present themselves in the market? How do we sell ourselves short because we have unresolved issues? And nobody's giving us the space to have these conversations within the marketplace. And when I refer to the marketplace, I refer to a place of trade, whether you're in it's academia, corporate, in your own community. I want to acknowledge everybody, every Mbogoto that is here. I understand that there is men, but this is for women. It's my girls here today, right? I want to acknowledge every woman. So often when we walk into the marketplace, we are forced to abandon who we are, who we truly are. Honey, not today. I want you to do something for me. I need 5 seconds of your time. I want you to summon every part of you that you left when you walked into the store. You're a mother, you're a woman, you're a girl, you're a grandmother, you're an aunt. Every element of who you are, we are bringing it all here today. We want to speak to every part of who you are. So I want you to take 5 seconds and just call yourself into your fullness and be present in your wholeness. Thank you. This is going to be a slightly different session because we're not going to talk from an intellectual perspective. We are talking about trauma. I know you're all looking at me and say, yeah, Hazel, trauma is in the mind. It's more complicated than that. We're going to talk about trauma and how we show up in our areas of influence. When we talk about the cost of gender-based violence, we often associate it with a financial component to it. Yes, that is true. Lately, we've gotten numbers and statistics around how much it costs from a financial perspective, but there's a much deeper cost to it. That cost is always in the background, dictating how we show up. It whispers how you're not good enough, how you're not pretty enough, how you're not educated, how when you're negotiating for a contract, we negotiate from a place of submission because that's what culture and norm dictates to us. Today we want to unbundle, unmask all of that, and we want to show up in our rawness, the Mogotos we really are. Behind me, or in front of me, is an incredible, incredible panel members that are joining me today on the stage. I call them incredible Mbogotos because they not only speak about gender-based violence, but they have experienced this. So they speak from a place of knowledge and experience. I'm going to call each and one of them to come up, and they're going to give us a 30-second brief intro of what they think and feel is the cost of gender-based violence. Coming from a trauma-informed perspective. I'm going to call through Tracy Kotzin, who is the CEO of Mental Wellness Initiative, just to give us a brief introduction, and I'll call in the next speakers. I just need assistance with the mic. Okay. All right. Tracy Cotton, the CEO of Mental Wellness Initiative. Elizabeth Dartnell, who is the... Elizabeth Dartnell, who is the Executive Director of SVRI, South African branch. I'm going to call Professor Cornier, who's from the #1 university. I'm going to call Mam Zwane, Zodwa Zane, who is the former PA to Winnie Mandela and the founding member of Zodwa Zane Foundation. This is the incredible panel that we have today who will speak to us as women, as Mbogoto. Tracy, I want to hand over to you to give us a 30-second brief of what you think trauma is and the cost that it comes with.
Can we use that rolling mic?
Is it on?
Thanks, Hazel. Hi, everyone. My heart sings to see so many young people that have joined us. Hells, yes? Yes, great. Okay, now I have 26 seconds. I am the granddaughter of a pedophile. My grandfather was a textbook pedophile. He had 11 children from 2 different wives. One of those wives had a nursery school, and he got into the kids at the nursery school. And once the door to that was ripped open in our family, the second generation were victims too. Not of my grandfather, but of every other predator that could sniff the opportunity. Because once it is open, it is open. So apart from the 11 aunts and uncles, there's about a dozen cousins. Myself and my 2 sisters included in that body count. So I have dedicated my life, my breath, my energy. This is the hill I am prepared to die on to put an end to gender-based violence. It should not exist. It should not exist. And so later on I will show you a bit about the methodologies that we will use to talk about trauma. And now I have 7 seconds left. And when we get to a little bit later in this session, I'm going to ask you to be courageous with me. So you've got a little time to find your courage, and we're going to circle back. And thank you for honoring the work and being here to listen to all things related to women. We are grateful for you. Thank you.
Tracy, thank you so much for your bravery. I'm Elizabeth Dartnell. I manage a global research network that really works to advance knowledge building in lower middle income countries unapologetically, to really advance how to improve responses and the prevention of violence against women and violence against children. And the way that we're doing that, and to thinking back to the issue around trauma, all of us enter this field with trauma. There are very few of us working in this field that have not had personal experiences or have witnessed or been exposed to some level of trauma. So as a field building organisation, we have to enter into field building to create care and kindness, collective care, to address the trauma, because often many of us that enter trauma fields bring a rage with us, bring an anger, and that rage and anger can be very powerful for change, but it also can be very destructive for change. And so if we do not address our traumas, the experiences that we've had throughout our lives as women, to really acknowledge that, so we can be kind and caring, we can create a collective of kindness to address gender-based violence in its entirety. And today what I'd really like to be talking about, particularly as women in the workplace, is the types of trauma that we're experiencing online that is creating barriers and making us think through how we filter what we can say and not say because of the bullying, the intimidation that we as women are experiencing online, and how that trauma and that fear is stopping us from engaging in a world that is incredibly powerful and really helps us progress and advance our human rights. So I'm really, really honoured to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation.
Hi, I'm Cornay Davis. I'm a known GBV activist. I'm the daughter of a perpetrator of GBV myself. I've got a family who's got a history of various experiences of GBV, and I've got many friends and colleagues and associates who have survived and are surviving GBV. And that's why I'm an activist. My work is aimed at supporting victims of finding paths to recovery. This is why we're doing this. We're working hard as strategic communication practitioners with the private sector to build support systems where both victims and perpetrators are present in the private sector, so that we can holistically address this problem in South Africa. So thank you for your time.
My name is Zodwa Zwane. Like the program director has said, the former personal assistant to the late Mrs. Winnie Madikizela Mandela, who went through a lot herself. And there are times when she shared her stories, I would ask her, did you go for counseling? And she would say, how could I, Zodwa? Because my story would be sold in the newspapers. I came to a point where I could not trust anybody. And at that point, I just had to hold her hand and say, it's okay. It is for that reason that a whole lot of people came to her for advices. And after her passing, then they come to me. And one of the things that I have seen that is caused by gender-based violence is that in families, it causes family feud. There can never be peace in the family. And one of the things is that there are young kids who witness this, and they will go on and do it themselves. And at schools, because women are abused everywhere, it then causes the results to be so poor. And if the results are poor, what kind of a nation are we going to have? We are in trouble. We all have to get together and make sure this ends. I shared some stories with this story with some few people yesterday. There are a whole lot of young people who committed suicide in Soweto. By yesterday, from the 27th of May to yesterday, it's 17 of them. And I have gone to see most of those families, more than 10 families. And when you hear their stories, some of them is bullying at schools. And those are things that we just talk about and not do anything about it, but it ends up, a child committing suicide. A child at the age of 11.
Yeah.
I thank you.
Thank you, Mam Zwane. Thank you all for sharing. I just want to put a disclaimer. Some of the content that we were sharing has some triggers and may trigger you. And if you feel you're triggered, please inform the program director. We'll attend to you once we're done with this plenary session. So, what is trauma? I want to call forth Tracy Kotzen to help us unmask trauma, what that really is. Tracy, I hand over to you.
Thanks, Hazel. My son is a film maker, and he says, when you want to tell a story, you show, you don't tell. So I'm going to show you what the cost of trauma is, because it is an uninvited surprise guest in this room anyway. So I'm going to ask you to put down your goodies, and the ladies, stand, please. All right. Prof, you're going to have to put down your notes there. Free up your hands. Free up your hands. Now take the hands of your sister. Just one. Not all the hands. Right? Find one person. Take both hands. No, take both hands like this. Both hands together. So maybe you can go with Hazel. There we go. There we go. I need a demo pair. Come here quickly. There's my demo pair. All right. And now I want you to see her. Look at the color of her eyes. Okay. Not so much talking. Not so much talking, more listening. All right, so just quietly, let's not talk. Quietly, just look at the color of her eyes. Look at her wrinkles and her freckles. Look at what is hiding behind the smile. What is hiding behind the smile? Do you see it? Stay where you are, looking at your sister. Now I want you to hear this. Half of the women in this room, which means if you're standing as a pair, it's one of you, has been raped, has been assaulted, has been beaten, has been denied a promotion, has been economically abused. Does that sound like we know what we're talking about, eh? Now, still looking at your sister, but also thinking about yourself. How is that history affecting your marriage? I'll tell you, in my life, my sexual abuse history sleeps in the middle of the bed every night. I have to fight with it every day. How does it affect your courage? How does it affect your ability to innovate, to create? How does it affect your ability to bring your dreams to the world? Do you feel unworthy? Do you feel not enough? Do you feel unvalued, unseen? That is the price of gender-based violence. How can we fully innovate, be creative, love, show up courageously when we are paying the price every day just to hide our pain? We camouflage. I left my camouflage at home today. You'll see I'm wearing flat shoes, no bright pink lipstick, because that is my camouflage. It makes me feel, powerful. I can hide in my sexy clothes. And I left my camouflage at home today. I just came as me. That is the cost. We can value it in money, certainly. We can value it in lost economic opportunities, certainly. But the cost is a human cost. It's every hope, every dream, every moment of courage that doesn't see the light because we have so much pain. And in our sisterhood, we must lift one another. In our sisterhood, we must stand as witnesses. Healing happens when it is witnessed by another who sees your soul. And I'm sorry, I know this is triggering and it's emotional, and I've been crying since yesterday. I'm actually surprised I'm not crying now. I think I cried out all my tears this morning before I came. But I want us to understand that this cost is a human cost. It's in the way we show up, and the cost is not in a textbook, it's in this room right now. Give your sister the biggest hug you can possibly find. 10-second hugs, eh? 10-second hugs are good ones. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Thank you. You can have a seat, ladies. I know that was hard. Thank you for being brave with me. Thank you for being brave with me. I want to ask the gentleman now to stand. I'm sure they ran for the hills. Let me see if there are any brave ones left. Gentlemen, stand. Okay. Don't worry, I'm not going to put you on the spot and I'm not going to make you cry. Look, we can't talk about the cost of gender-based violence and then leave half the population out. And I don't, in fact, agree that men are the problem. It's a whole society problem. How many guys have we got here? Can someone quickly do a head count? There's 2 there, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I might have missed one, about 22. The Optimus study that was conducted by UCT over 3 years, including 10,000 children, that study tells us that as many young boys as girls are sexually abused in childhood. In fact, slightly more boys than girls. Which means out of the 22 people here, statistically, 11. And what happens to those young men when they grow up? Of course we're going to see domestic violence. Of course we're going to see dysfunctional coping. Of course we're going to see all sorts of addictions. The price is a price we all pay every day. All of us. It's not a men problem and a woman problem. It's an us problem. And we have to solve it together. Thank you, gentlemen. I know this topic is hard. We can't intellectualize the things that rip into our spirit. We've got to deal with it in the spirit. Thank you for standing in courage with me.
This is the cost.
No, I think the panel has dissembled for a bit, so maybe we might just want to sort of take a grounding moment. And if we all could just sit in our seats and feel our bum on the seats. Sit back. And then just breathe. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then out. And let's just ground ourselves. We've felt our trauma, but also think about the joy of being here in a collective, the joy of the possibility and the community that we are here together. We're here all together because we care deeply, that we've been showing the pain. For the first time, often we don't have this experience, where we bring the reality of all of us who work in this field feels so deeply. And why many of us in this, we come here because the personal is political. And we're here because we want to address it. I want to thank you, Tracy, for bringing up and surfacing the real issues of what we're trying to address and how all of us in this room have witnessed, experienced, been exposed to trauma. And just to follow on, I'm going to bring us back to a few facts because that does help us ground a little bit about how many children every day are exposed to violence, and we have to stop the cycling of violence through generations because we need to be a successful nation, and often the nations that are most traumatized are the most violent. We can do it together as a community. We can.
How are we all feeling? Should we go ahead? No? Yes? Yes. Thank you, Elizabeth, for grounding us. This is the true work that we do almost on a daily basis. And this is real. I want to pose a question to our professor from the #1 university. Prof, you're very vocal about gender inequality, and you've spoken about your own experience. Why is it that corporates, the marketplace itself, shies away from dealing with issues around gender inequality, discrimination, gender-based violence? It's almost like this Pandora's box that nobody wants to open. Why?
Well, you see, this is the problem that we have generally, that we have got things on paper. We've got commitments on paper. We've got the most advanced constitution. We've got the law has been changed, making it easier to protect witnesses, for example, in the cases of GBV. And in the workplace, we've got policy on gender equality. But then we look at the facts. 37% of women make up at half the population, but they contribute a minor percentage to the GDP. 26% of women are in the C-suite. 26% of women. It's been known that if we achieved gender equality, we could have increased the global GDP by $12 trillion, which is the size of Japan and America and, I forgot the third country, our entire economies. We could increase by improving gender equality, but it's not happening. You've got 7% of women that occupy top executive positions, CEO positions. So now we wonder, why are we not achieving success with addressing GBV if there's insufficient women in leadership? Because we got it in writing, but it's not happening in practice. So what they do is they put women in positions as board members. So exactly what executive authority does a board member have in terms of changing the way things operate in business? It's not happening fast enough, and they're not being held accountable for that. Because every year we see the report, we see the PricewaterhouseCoopers report, we're looking at the statistics of all the top companies, and the numbers are not changing. That is why we are sitting with the problems we're sitting with. Not enough women in top leadership.
Who's setting the policies? Sorry, can I just do a follow-up question? Clearly it's not the women. Who is setting the policies?
It's not the women, because the women are not in the positions of top authority.
Something we need to change.
There's something we need to change.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Currently, current policies don't cater for women.
No, you still, as a matter of fact, interesting fact, you've still got some companies with a policy not to put women of childbearing age in any leadership positions.
That's a policy?
Yeah. Unspoken, not in writing. It's the undercurrent in those companies. Don't promote women who are of childbearing age, because they're going to go on maternity leave and it's going to disrupt the profit of the business. So just hold them back. We've heard this in many conversations. Informally, it's there.
Well, I think one way to address that is give men paternity leave as well.
I think that's enough, but...
Thank you. Thanks, Professor. I've got a dozen of questions that are coming your way regarding that. I want to move on to Elizabeth Dartnell. Yesterday, we had the High Commissioner to Malawi present, and she was talking about how we, at the that English word, of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, I worry because as women, we seem to have this unprogressive dance, flirtatious dance with digital, with technology, and we seem not to progress in that area. The chances are we become a cake dinosaur, we lose out on opportunities and being positioned where we're supposed to be positioned. Now, you speak about, it's called the tech-facilitated GBV. What is that? Please take us through what tech-facilitated GBV is.
So this is working right. Tech-facilitated gender-based violence is an act using information communication technology to really, and digital tools that results in physical, sexual, economic, political harm, and really infringes on our rights as human beings. But we really know that tech-facilitated gender-based violence has an extensive reach and disproportionately impacts on women. And not just all women, particularly women who are in offline violences or experiences are more likely to be exposed to gender-based violence. So women of colour, women from ethnic minorities, women who have disabilities, or women who are LGBTQI plus populations, who the harms are even more extensive and incredibly long-lasting. And the impacts of gender-based violence really does, and I want to talk a little bit more, can I talk about the gender divide? Yeah. Because it really does exacerbate that gender divide. So the UN Women shows that the majority of the 2.9 billion people who do not have access to the internet, most are women. However, if we talk about what technology gender-based violence does to women, is that those of us online, and I'm sure all of us in this room who are working online in political spaces, leaders of industry, those women in the C-suites, professors, women professors are experienced and exposed to bullying, intimidation on a daily basis. That intimidation decreases the likelihood that we want to engage actively online, or it makes us think, before we go online, what are we going to say? What are we going to do? What are we opening up our email to? What awful things are going to happen? What are our partners either sharing online to really intimidate and bully us and keep us quiet? And in that sense, it exacerbates that digital divide because women are increasingly opting out of acting online, and therefore our allyship and ability to engage with the online space, which is an incredible, powerful tool for all of us, is being limited by online violence. And so we really need to be addressing that, and we need to be thinking about us as women. What are the tools that we have available to us to address this new emerging form of violence, and how do we better understand it?
Thank you. Absolutely, absolutely. We did an interview in our last edition of a magazine with a lady that works in the media. Her name is Lalina. And one of the questions that, that came up was, women don't want visibility because they're afraid of being judged. Although the issue of gender-based violence, to end it means we need to stand up and speak. But they don't want to because they themselves are being bullied, like she's saying, being judged, and you have all sorts of traumatic pictures about you coming out, trickling from heaven knows where. And that speaks highly of the environment that we're in. But it is important that we occupy the space, the tech space. We occupy and become visible. Not just one woman, but all of us. And when we work together, this is just me, it's not a closing statement, but when we stand together and we hold each other's hands, we will not have anybody come against this fence that we have bridged together. It's not about us pulling each other down, but us building each other up online. Let's do that, Mbogodos. Right. Mamzwane, I want to come to you. I want to trigger you a bit more. Are you all right?
Not in a bad way.
Not in a bad way.
Okay.
Are you okay? All right. So you work in the communities and you see this firsthand. What has been your experience when it comes to generational trauma? What do you see in the communities? How does that play out?
Like I said earlier on, that sometimes it even leads to suicide. Because when you listen to the stories, they're not, some families are not able to say it has to end here because they don't even know how. And remember, the communities that, like the community I'm in, people don't even know where to go when they're going through such things. The families that I see, you know, when you're talking about them seeing social workers, they'll tell you, we don't have money. And yet, they do have social workers, you know, everywhere in the offices. However, if they go to those social workers, they are so busy, they don't have time. You might get an appointment for 2 months later, and what happens in the interim? So it is this generational curse, and remember, if somebody is going through that within your space, in the community, it actually affects the community. Day before yesterday, when I received a message that there is another boy, a 17-year-old that committed suicide. It is just in that area, you know, it's three streets away from the girl that committed suicide 2 months ago. And, you know, it's just near. And you ask yourself, because now it's happening in the community. And if it has happened that street, the possibility is that the following week it will be that other street. So it is happening, and we are at the point where we don't even know how to help these families.
Wow. Thank you, Mom Zwane. And I think we even spoke about a story about how women have become perpetrators themselves from the gender, from their own experience. They've also become perpetrators. Prof, I just want to ask you, you are an activist and you're working with a lot of organizations in putting up systems in place. Are you able to share with us, I mean, we've spoken about all the horrible things, but there is some groundwork that is happening, and we've made significant inroads from the gender perspective. We've designed tools, assessment tools, we've got apps. Do you want to take us through some of the help, the aid, or the help that we can go to when we're experiencing gender-based violence?
Look, we're a long way off in terms of the action yet.
Okay.
We've got the awareness. So we've got the attention. We've had our third JSE event just a week ago, where we're engaging with CEOs. But the topic we're addressing first is gender inequality. Because gender inequality is the key driver. Like we say, we do not have enough women in positions of authority to implement the programs in the workplace. But what we do have is we developed a gender equality measuring instrument for companies to self-assess, that we can just say, okay, this is where we're starting, that they can have the self-assessment tool, and then we provide them with steps to help accelerate the empowerment of women to get to a position of equality. In terms of the gender-based violence, what we're campaigning for now is to get the first entry level. What we're saying is create awareness. So what we're asking is put the information about what is happening in our country. Put it on your intranet. It's a one-pager. This is South Africa. These are the kinds of gender-based violence. This is what's happening. These are the statistics. This is the prevalence. This is the most prominent form. Here are all the organizations you can contact for help. Cost you nothing to put a page on an intranet. If we can just have that first entry point. We're not saying put a social worker in your HR department and deal with, because that's not going to happen. Because we know that GBV is stigmatized. So neither victims nor perpetrators yet wanted to be known in the workplace that what's going on.
That's important.
Which is one of the greatest reasons why we've got more than 93% of cases of GBV not reported to police. That is why our stats are skewed. That is why our economic assessment in terms of what is it costing our economy is skewed. Because we can only go on World Health data, and we can go on economic data, but we don't have the actual data because people are not reporting it. So how can you assess the economic cost? What we do know, it's costing at least 40% of the cost of GBV is borne by the employer. We know that we've got two key terms, absenteeism and presenteeism. Presenteeism, people showing up at work but not functioning. They're there, but then... So that we are raising awareness of, so that we're making progress in terms of awareness, because we're reaching more and more CEOs. We're embarking on a new private sector research project with KPMG that we're running next year. We are busy with University of Western in Canada running an international IPV study, which we hope to get funding to do in South Africa, that we can show what is the cost in terms of actual employee assessment. So yes, there we're making progress, Hazel. Okay. Things are happening there. But to get to the point where there's actual support mechanisms, we're not quite there yet. We're moving towards it. That's the good news.
We're happy. At least some milestone we've made. Some milestones. Elizabeth, you work with low-income, middle to low-income communities throughout East Asia, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
So we work globally,
Yes.
and we support research and resource mobilization for research in low and middle income countries globally.
Okay. From an entrepreneur, I'm sure there's some entrepreneurs as well within that strata, or women that are empowered, are being empowered. What are some of the drivers of gender-based violence within that area? And what is the impact on their performance? What I'm trying to bring out is how gender-based violence affects women and how they show up in the workspace.
So what I can talk about is sort of our understandings of the drivers, which Profi has always talked about. So there are a number of key drivers that we all understand that are shared across perpetration and victimization. One, of course, within the sort of larger environment are things like gender inequality, but also poverty. And then from an individual perspective, it is around witnessing violence in the household, which you've just spoken about. It's also about relationships, quarrelling and fighting within relationships, so needing to improve communications, etc., within relationships. There are also things within perpetration around mental health problems, alcohol and drug abuse. But these drivers are also exacerbated by what's going on within the country or the community, like conflict, humanitarian crisis, and people with disabilities, for example, are much more likely to be exposed to or experiencing gender-based violence, as well as people coming from low LGBTQI+, or those communities that more or harder to access, ethnic minorities, etc. In terms of the intervention programs that have been found to work with women, is those programs that engage both men and women, as we spoke about. We can't be working with just one slice of society. This is a complex, wicked issue. We have to address those multiple drivers, and we have to engage multiple players and multiple sectors of so there's no silver bullet. But it is about bringing like this group, diverse perspectives together to try and solve this complex, wicked problem. Within the socioeconomic empowerment programs that have been found to work, it is, I think, give women, empower women, give them money, give them support to be able to do what they need to do. People know what they need in their lives and livelihoods. But at the same time, empower men around gender empowerment, equality, understanding, the roles of both women and men in society and the issues around equality. But also, that the way that we're working and living right now is working for nobody. The levels of violence, that this gender equality, we all are born into patriarchy, as Sylvia Plath has said. Sylvia Plath, excuse my English. And so we are all born into it. So we have to transform the leaders of private sector and then see how it trickles down. But we also have to learn from the ground up. And so I think what works is not a simple solution or one solution, but I do think empowering women economically, addressing poverty, entrepreneurship is an incredibly powerful tool. But we can't just do it and leave men behind either. They have to be part of the solution and the conversation.
Absolutely. It's a whole societal problem. Just one last question for Tracy, and then we can have a conversation and a closing, and then we can ask questions. If everyone has a question and online, I'm not sure who's facilitating the online questions, if you can just help with that. Okay, thank you. When we talk about trauma, we've been looking at it from an intrinsic perspective. But the system itself comes with its own trauma. Do you want to highlight for us the system, the trauma that the system comes with?
Yeah, thanks, Hazel. Such a good question. You know, we think of the system as the thing out there. It's like it's like if we were the fishes, the system is the water, right? We think of it as being separate from ourselves. But in fact, we are the creators of the system. We are also the inheritors of the system that was created before we were born, and so the system perpetuates as humanity perpetuates and evolves as humanity evolves. It's not a static thing that you are born into and then pop out of. It is within us. We are it and it is us. So that's principle number one. And that's an important principle because once we recognize that we are the system, we can change the system, right? You can't change something that you don't feel you have power within that to change. And so yes, trauma lives within the system. I mean, we can talk about trauma coming from apartheid, but in fact we can talk about 400 years worth of trauma. And I don't want to drown us in a conversation about colonization because I think we get that. What we maybe don't appreciate is that the ramifications of all of that still lives in our systems today. And patriarchy is that beautiful word that we've coined to kind of capture it, but it is that and more. It is entrenched trauma. It is intergenerational trauma. It is institutional trauma. An organization can be bullied by another organization. Did you know that? Right? Yes? Yes. And power imbalances can exist within institutions, within units of the same institutions, within departments. And instead of people working collectively and cohesively towards the same goal, it becomes this dysfunctional struggle for power. And so I'm going to bully you and abuse you and exert this authority over you and so create trauma within the institution. I mean, quick raise of the hands if you've ever had a toxic workplace. If you work at UJ, don't put your hand up at all there. No. Okay. Everyone else, if you've ever worked in a toxic, if you've worked in a toxic workplace, just own it. Right? So we understand that trauma can live at an institutional level. And I think the beauty of it, and Hazel, I'm going to wrap up with what I'd started and actually just join the dots for us here. The reason I took us through that painful exercise actually has a point. It wasn't just to traumatize everyone. It's because the greatest obstacles we face are not actually outside of ourselves. But Prof is absolutely right about what you're finding in research and the way there needs to be more women in leadership positions and all of these things in the world. Those things are true. Those barriers exist. But the greatest barrier you're going to face is the one inside you. Now, if we've experienced GBV, we've got extra barriers, right? And so already as women, we come born into a world that is barriered for us. Now we've experienced GBV, and that gives us additional barriers. It gives us shame, unworthiness, not enoughness. Right? We make us doubt the very value, our very essence we doubt. And if you are like me, you put on the high heels and the lipstick and make your hair pretty, hoping that this camouflage is going to make me feel more worthy. You know, I'm going to put on this costume. It's a costume in a sense, so that I can feel more worthy or look more worthy on the outside than I sometimes feel on the inside. If those barriers of shame and unworthiness, if you've heard of imposter syndrome, Hells, please Google it if you haven't, because you may be suffering from it. Imposter syndrome is this overwhelming feeling that no matter what you do, you're never going to be good enough. But it's bullshit. Pardon the French. Apologies to anyone who's got sensitive ears. It's just bullshit. The truth is that you are deeply valuable, deeply valuable. And when Prof is talking about these women who need to take up leadership positions, where are they going to come from? They better be coming from this room, right? They better be coming from this room. And so when we think about this future state of systemic change, Hazel, and the way systems need to be less a harbor for trauma and more a harbor for healing, it is us who create the system. It is us who must take the principles of healing, compassion, kindness into those systems, along with all the other cool leadership things we will do. But leadership is not just about that I know how a balance sheet works or how to recruit people. It is about compassion and kindness. It's about creating space for healing. It's about having the courage to allow hard conversations to happen in your workspace and not run away from people's feelings. It is about growing, helping people discover that value inside themselves. And when we do that in our systems, my God, can we change the world? I kid you not. It has to happen where you are. And so we've got to climb over our own internal barriers. That is the work for us as individuals. Embody the power of the positions we're in, no matter what that position is. It doesn't have to be a title. It's just where you're at. There's power right where you are. And when enough of us do it, how is a tsunami formed? Billions of drops of water all agreed to go in the same direction with the same amount of force. Right? As far as I'm concerned, that is the cure. Thank you, Hazel.
To that, I put a full stop. Thank you. Thank you so much. We can't take any questions, or maybe just one question. I know. Okay, just 2 questions from the audience, and quick questions. The lady in black, and then the lady there. Oh, I was told 2. Oh, the men. All right, so can I swap you with one man? Gender equality.
Thank you very much. I have 2 questions. One. First is, in your work and in your engagements with men, what has been the response with men? Are they buying into that? Secondly, do you have any positive experiences of change? Because I think we focused very much on the negatives. Have you experienced any transformation or positive change of healing, of recovery, of growth? And I think we need to hear those stories as well.
Is that question for entity?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. But there's a really wonderful study that was done by colleagues in Nicaragua that talked about what does it take to really make change at a national level. And one of the fundamental kind of mechanisms was women's rights movements. It wasn't women's rights movements on their own, it was women's rights movements that were open government, that was putting good legislation and support in place, lots of NGOs, police, justice, health sector. The whole system was working to change, and within a period of 10 years, they reduced levels of violence and intimate partner violence. I mean, I can't remember, by 30% or something. So we know we can reduce and prevent violence, and we can do it within Project Lifestyle. It doesn't take generations. The not so good part of that story is we have this fantastic success story. It was, as a field, we'd learnt we can prevent gender-based violence, and it doesn't take long. It's doable. We know what to do, there's things that we can do. But then the government changed. It became a conservative government, and then all the success crumbled. But the lesson is that we have to keep fighting. We need this collective, and we can do this. We know how to do it, and we have the tools at hand. But I want to talk about the men as allies, because we have a lot of men as allies. There's networks, there's Men Engage Alliance. They do wonderful, powerful work, working alongside us as allies.
I know we push for time, Hazel.
Yes, we are pushed for
Okay,
time.
so
Yes,
no, okay.
can we have
So
the
I think Elizabeth answered that.
Can we take the next question? Where is the gentleman? Yes, they're up there. You'll have to shout. Oh, okay. I do like your question on that, on men and being allies. There's a lot of work in the background that is happening that is very inclusive of men. Men also struggle with gender-based violence. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I think it's working. Okay, I just want to share some of the experiences, just few comments on this, and I just want to also, I'm taking advantage because I'm also a neighbor for this university. I'm a teacher in the school uphill, which is actually the school is facing the university. The school used to be a special school because it used to admit learners that are VOCs, vulnerable orphanage children. Most of them were abused. Sometimes if the child is sexually abused, they will be taken by social workers and they will be admitted to the school. It's
Go ahead. We can hear you. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Right, so when I actually started in the school, I asked, my first question was that, why is there no full-time counselor or social worker in the school? Because we are dealing with a lot of learners who are traumatized almost every day, and looking into the discipline and all, it's very difficult to deal with learners of that nature. And now the area also is affected because most of the kids around, they are smoking, and even when they walk to school, they smoke before even they reach school. And so one of the things that I've done in the school, I think maybe a year after I was in the school.
Sorry, can I ask you to get to the question? Because we're pressed for time.
I just wanted to make a quick comment on some of the things that I have done and what also the people that can also assist. Because like I said, the university, I think Glenn was also talking about volunteers. Because we once had some volunteers coming because we had Trevor Noah was opening the school. But one of the things that I've asked the learners to do was to write their stories down so that we have a box in the school where they can drop in, and then maybe we have a day where anyone can just pick up the story and read so that they can start to relate to their stories. But besides that, we wanted solutions. So even now, there's no change, but we're just seeing more learners becoming more violent, even the boys. So someone is like saying now there's mental health because we have to have police around the school for us to be able to have order in the school. And these are things that are happening even now.
Wow.
You know, so I was just wanted to comment.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate. I have so much to say when it comes. Please, just one last. You're the last person, so I won't even read from online. My.
Morning, everyone. My name is Ibrahim. I'm a third-year public relations student. My question is, the system which we live in, as you mentioned, is a system which was created by dead people. Those people are dead now. And in 100 years to come, we'll all be dead. Nobody will be around. Now, my biggest worry is this conversation that we are having now and the books that our professors are writing and the research we are conducting is not given to the schools. It's not being spoken in primary schools, in high schools, but it's us who are already privileged who are having this conversation. Yeah. Now, how can we make it possible for the schools, the primary school, because we need to develop a new system in order to combat the old one. So we need to start from the ground going up, not us who are already privileged listening to this kind of conversation. That's my
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Care to comment?
I'm
as we
going to
close?
start by saying that I'm come from a civil society organization, and we partner with UJ for exactly that reason. So that what the university is discovering in terms of student research and faculty research, we can grab it, turn it into language that everyone understands, because you know academics, right? And then just publish it. So Collective Action Magazine, here's the logo, part of our job is to take GBV research findings and publish it in almost real time so that people can use it for program development in the real world, and it'll find its way into schooling systems.
And I just want to add, researchers should not be doing research for research's sake. We have to be doing, it's expensive, it's a public resource, we have to be partnering with schools and folk and making sure what we do reaches them in ways that are useful and helpful. And our collective, the S3I, that's what we're trying to do as well. It's a really fantastic comment. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's work being done at schools. Not enough yet, but it's being done. I mean, that's where my career in GBV started. Matla Abana. It changed my life. It's about educating children about child rape and secondary abuse, but there's a lot more to be done, and we need to support more work in schools. We're doing that.
One of the things that I said, last week at the function where we had, in fact, mental illness practitioners were there, because I called most of the families that are going through, is that fortunate are the schools that have social workers. However, social workers should not just sit there and wait for kids who have got problems to come to them. We should come up with programs that will actually teach them, that they should not get into these things like bullying, like gender-based violence, and all those things. So we should actually come up with those things so that it doesn't just come to you guys at this level, because then we have a problem at grassroots level. I thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. One more round of applause for this incredible team.